the show. So, Jesse, always appreciate the time. Good to have you with us in San Diego. Obviously, it's a huge talking point in San Diego, what's going on right now with the Dodgers. And, of course, the Padres thought maybe they were in on Sasaki. So just like a 30,000-foot conversation that comes up, I'm sure, a lot when you're on radio or TV or, writing about the sport. Is what's going on right here, quote unquote, good for the sport? When the Dodgers have the $375 million payroll, the next closest is Philadelphia. I think Jeff Passan tweeted maybe $70 million under that. Is this sustainable? Is this good? What happens on the other side of this when there's another CBA? And thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I don't think it's great for the sport that so much talent is concentrated in one place or several places, if you include the Yankees and maybe the Mets. Like, it's probably not great, but I don't blame the Dodgers. They're playing under the rules, right? They're doing what is allowed under these rules. I think that a couple things are in play. I think they made a ton of money over the last year or so, and certainly the last few years between their TV deal. Shohei Ohtani is paying for himself and then some. So I think they're spending the money they're making. And who knows? We might be reaching a tipping point in terms of the economic system of the sport. So maybe they're loading up knowing that after 2026, there's going to be a new system in place. Who knows? Salary cap, not salary cap. It could look different. It could look similar. But what do they care? They're loading up and they're ready to be good for the next 3 years. So, I mean, I don't think it's great that a couple, three teams, are the ones going after all the stars every year. It's probably not great. I mean, that's just common sense. I don't blame anybody but the system itself. And that, comes down to the owners and the players, to be honest. It's their job to collectively bargain a system that's provides some parity and things like that. And 86 win teams can get to the World Series, but the Dodgers are guaranteeing themselves a playoff berth over and over and over again. And again, I don't see a problem with that, but the problem could be within the system.
A couple of years ago, it wasn't too long ago that, the Padres were third in payroll in all of baseball. Peter Seidler was a guy that wanted to invest a lot of his money in the on-field product. And in turn, it made a lot of small market owners upset. One in particular, Dick Monfort of the Colorado Rockies, calling out Peter Seidler, saying, it's not sustainable. And then you see a lot of pundits out there and national media saying it's not sustainable. Why aren't these small market owners upset about what the Dodgers are doing? And in turn, why aren't people, I guess, putting the pressure on those small markets to be like, hey, why aren't you spending money? Why aren't you going out and spending your money when the Dodgers are doing exactly what they should be doing?
So I think it comes down to what you believe in terms of the economics of the sport. The Padres, I think it's kind of commonly known. They're a good example that I think we would all agree were operating at a loss in those moments under Peter Seidler, in those years, I guess you can say. And they're feeling the effects now. I think they're looking to dump some more salary. I think they didn't bring back Martin Perez because he was $5 million. So I mean, if you're willing to operate at a loss, okay, but I could see how the other small market owners would be upset because they're making them look bad because they don't want to operate at a loss. The Dodgers are operating with their profits, and I don't think anybody can come down on them for that. So I think if you really want to peel back everything that's going on here, that's the difference. The Padres were operating at a loss. The Dodgers are operating and using their profits back in their team. And so the small market owners, I think, would say, if we make a lot of money, we'll put it back on our team and we'll spend some, but we're not. Now, again, that's all up to all of us to believe or not believe because the books aren't open. But if you saw some of the comments out of Chicago where I'm based, the owner of the Cubs, a big market team, said, hey, we're looking to break even. And everybody went nuts because they didn't believe that that's all they do year to year. So that's the difference. Small market teams don't want to operate at a loss, while a team like the Dodgers doesn't have to.
Jesse Rogers, ESPN, with us right now on Jon and Jim. So switching gears to Roki Sasaki, which clearly wasn't solely about money for the player because he could only get so much in this posting process. But then again, the sustainability of an organization or the direction of an organization, I'm sure was critically important to the player. What do you think was the difference here? Why LA above the other potential suitors in your mind?
In my mind, it was almost fait accompli. The momentum of that team, Shohei, Yamamoto. I mean, the one thing was Darvish was a big selling point, certainly for San Diego. But I can't know until we hear from the kid, right? The things that his agent said applied to a bunch of teams. I do think year in and year out, there's really, until further notice, only a handful of teams, including the Padres, that Japanese players are going to want to go to. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to make them comfortable, the best version of themselves. And there's 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 teams that really understand and know how to do it. They recruit over there. They've already had a history of Japanese players, and the Dodgers are among them. So I can't tell you his personal motivation. We don't know that. He hasn't done an interview yet. But I think that we're just going to hear that it's the Dodgers. It's all the things you'd expect. And, why maybe he turned away from you, Darvish, one of his heroes. Again, we have to hear from him. But I think I'll tell you someone within the sport that was after him. That's one of these teams I'm talking about, one of these half dozen teams. I'm not going to tell you the team. Said to me, if the Dodgers want you, why wouldn't you want them? Right. Does that answer it? Yeah. Does that answer it for you?
Yeah, no, that absolutely does. They are in the position right now where it's like a destination. Hey, you want to win and get paid and be in Southern California? Like, we are the destination for you. And we've just seen that with Tanner Scott, and Kirby Yates today. Jesse, a part of the recruitment process for Roki Sasaki that has come up recently has been about the ownership issues with the Padres. And I don't know if that played any role in this, but it's been reported the Dodgers were like, hey, look, we're stable here. Padres, they're really not stable because of the lawsuit between, the Seidler brothers and Shields Seidler. Have you heard anything around baseball as far as like what is going to happen with this and how much of an effect it could have on the Padres going forward in making moves and signings and free agency?
Yeah, I really haven't. I think that there's the business side and then there's the baseball side, and certainly the Padres have done a good job on the baseball side. Yeah, they're not spending like they did when Peter was around, but they have a good baseball ops operation, and department, I guess I should say, good baseball ops department. So I haven't heard that impacting it, but it is kind of early in that turmoil there. If it explodes in some way, maybe. I'm going to guess it didn't have an impact on Sasaki. It's like, you heard behind, under the surface that Sasaki was most likely to go to the Dodgers for almost a year now, which is why I think the agent was so adamant about this process being public in a way. Like, most agents don't hold press conferences. Joe Wolf held a couple of them. He wanted to make it clear that it was on the up and up, whether it was or not. I assume that it was. And every team had a chance. Could be wrong, but I think it's just what I said. If the Dodgers want you, why wouldn't you want them? And of course, he had to hear the right things. I mean, most pitchers that come over want to hear about how are you going to make me better and keep me healthy and things. I know the Dodgers have had some history of injuries. They've also had a history of making Dodger pitchers really good. Michael Kopech comes over there and he's lights out. So. I think it was down to a handful of teams. And again, why wouldn't you pick the Dodgers? So I don't think there's anything negative going on with the Padres publicly, but obviously events could change that.
Jesse Rogers, ESPN with us. I mean, it wasn't long ago, Jesse, the Padres led the Dodgers 2-1. I think for a brief moment of time, they were probably the favorite to win the World Series for that one day, leading that series at home.
It was a fun day.
4. It was a very fun day.
I remember that day very well.
Then they were blown out in Game 4, and then they didn't score in Game 5. Of course, they didn't score in 24 consecutive innings. Like, I guess my point is this. We get so enamored with an offseason. Padres have had good offseasons and then bad teams. Yeah. And then the Dodgers last offseason, Ohtani, Yamamoto, their regular season was 98 wins. They trailed the Padres, of course, in that series again, 2-1. I guess my question is this. Even with the Padres having a quiet offseason, do you still see them as a viable contender in the National League?
Well, I do, except that it does seem like they're tightening their purse strings. And so that, of course, could be a concern. Now, AJ Preller is a wheeler and dealer. And, most owners, when it comes to the deadline, provide some wiggle room if their management comes to them and says, look, we have a chance at winning it all here. So, they might be tightening the purse strings now. Doesn't mean they have to in July. But I think, you have to worry that they were adding, and now they're starting to subtract a little bit more. And let's see if Dylan Cease or, Robert Suarez has to be moved before opening day, but AJ's pretty good at this kind of stuff. And I still see them as a contender. Look what they did last July, for example, right? So it's going to be a little bit tougher of a road than it was under Peter, who was just spending.
Jesse, final one for me. What have you heard about the market for Jurickson Profar?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that's a great example of the Padres, right? And whether they would have the money or not. It's going to get moving. I just don't know which team's going to jump because there are some teams tightening the purse strings. Like, the Blue Jays just spent some money, but he's going to have a market. I just don't know what, sort of dollars and contracts he's looking at, but that's a great example of a guy that, should be on the Padres, but may not be because of the cost.
No doubt. Jesse, we appreciate it. We're excited for the start of spring training just a couple of weeks away. We appreciate you joining us in San Diego, and we hope to do it again soon. So thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
You got it, guys. Be well.